What's going on, everybody? I'm Chip Walton. Welcome to Chop and Brew. Once again, we're in the Bad Ass Brewery. I'm with
Chris Paynes,
Nathan Smith, Badass Bryon Adams.
That's right, the Bad Ass Brewery has been made all the more badass by the presence of one Nathan Smith. You guys know him as a California homebrewer, award-winning California homebrewer.
I paid Chip to say that.
But he's from Minnesota and he's in town visiting some family, so we thought we'd take the opportunity to invite him into the Bad Ass Brewery, invite him to use some badass New Zealand hops sent to us by fan James Morgan from New Zealand. Tell the people what we're brewing real quick.
We're going to brew Saison. We're going to put these New Zealand hops to work with some badass yeast strains, 3724 and 3711 from Y Yeast, two classic Saison strains. 3711 has been particularly great reputation among new American craft brewers. 3724 is the classic Saison strain that many people associate with DuPont. So throw those after some New Zealand hops. These hops have been bred with not only New Zealand rootstock but also Saaz, and they have kind of a cool New Zealand, Southern Hemisphere, Northern Hemisphere, continental European character. So kind of play off of some old world, new world stuff.
So ride with us. We're doubling down on a Saison with some badass hops, some badass homies, and maybe a beer or two. Chop for chop. Brew for brew.
Yeah, big guns. Stir your mash, one arm.
Booyah, we're in this makeshift studio. If you could see the ridiculous lights that are just off frame. This is a pretty makeshift, but the vent hood in the actual brewery is way too loud. So tell us about the recipe, the grist. Tell us about the conceptualization when we asked you, you could brew anything you want in the Badass Brewery. How did we get here?
Well, Saison is a style that I think a lot of people like to throw the kitchen sink in terms of malt bill. A lot of people like to use oats, rye, spelt. You can make some great beers with those. Wheat is another popular one. Just go real simple, kind of classic, just like how we read about maybe how DuPont does it. One of my favorite Saisons, just using Pilsner malt. And we did that with just a little bit of acidulated to kind of get the pH in balance and a little bit of flavor from the acidulated too, a little bit of tang. So real simple on the malt bill. We'll focus on yeast character and a little bit of hop character. I mean, Saison's a style where yeast character really does so much of the talking. We'll just kind of get out of the way and make it work. But speaking of malt,
yeah, talk about the two malts, like why those and why you like both of
Castle
those.
Pils in particular is a really nice Pilsner malt, really classic Belgian Pilsner malt, kind of a little different than you'd get from a German Pilsner malt where you're going to get a little bit of toast and melanoid character. This is a little more neutral and kind of has a grassy, nice, pleasant, sweet character. It goes really well with the Belgian yeast esters. So that choice, and then the environment acidulated malt is probably one of the only acidulated malts that you can get. So to get that effect, go straight there.
And it's tangy, right? There's acid on this malt to some degree.
Yeah, it's kind of, I think it was created so that the German brewers can do the whole Reinheitsgebot thing and not have to use actual acids. They can use a malt product. And I think that you get lactobacillus on malt naturally, and this is a special process used that let the lactobacillus kind of take over and change the acidulated malts. So yeah, we use those in the malt bill. Only about 3 to 4% acidulated, and the rest is all straight Castle Pills. So, simple malt bill, and then you just let the 3711 and 3724 yeast, do the heavy lifting here. And then New Zealand hops will provide a unique signature character.
And we found out something about the Bad Ass Brewery today. It's apparently highly efficient.
That's how I roll.
But maybe that has to do with Chris Paynes being in the house.
Chris Paynes
Yeah.
dialing it all in.
He schooled us today, as
Today
usual.
we got schooled on some pH. What's the importance of pH in mash?
The enzymes that work in the mash to kind of break down the long chain sugars, they work best at a lower pH between 5.2 to 5.4. So if they're not in that range, they're not going to work to their optimal capability. So during the brew day, we made sure that we got into that pH range so we could get the correct efficiency, clarity, and so on.
So we're going for attenuation on this beer. And we want to make sure we're not leaving too many sugars behind. Let the yeast really drive it down to single-digit attenuation.
So our pre-boil gravity was calculated at 10.
We're going to try and hit about 11 for 11 Play-Doh.
Uh-huh.
So about 1040s somewhere.
Yeah.
Turned out a little different than that since we got such great efficiency. Good reason to always double check before you start boiling. You can always adjust on the fly.
Yeah.
I think people forget that sometimes. So yeah, we made some last minute adjustments to the hop bill and bumped it up because we found out now we're making about 8% beer.
Yeah.
Instead
So
of our
Play-Doh
original
was
plan was 6 and change.
16, right?
Yeah.
16's our Play-Doh.
16 to 17 target right after boil, after cooling, yeah.
So thank
Crazy.
goodness we had the brain trust in tow here, because as the brew day started to transform, we had to make some quick adjustments for the hops.
Yep.
Tell us about the hops that we chose to go with. These are, we got 5 varieties from New Zealand, but we kind of decided through process of elimination to hone in on 2, right? Tell us about the 2.
Matuika and Rawaka. Rawaka is a really cool, rare one you don't see too often, so I figured we better use that before the hops get too much older. But both of those hops come from the same breeding program in New Zealand, and they have taken this approach where they want to breed New Zealand hops with Saaz and really try and bump up the interesting signature character of the kind of tropical and citrus qualities you get from New Zealand hops with the continental European character. I believe it was Matuika that was been called, Belgian Saaz or B Saaz under some circumstances of Belgian brewers that do really like the hops. I think it'll go well with Saison. And then Rawaka is such a really cool tropical and citrus sort of cross, interesting character in the finish. We'll use that in the hop back, and I think that will really drive a cool, unique signature character. People think about Saison, they really want to add, the whole spice cabinet to really give the beer, spicy character is what we kind of associate with Saison. But I think you can do that with unique signature hops also, and then not have to go into realms that are a little bit more unpredictable. So we'll drive that spiciness with yeast and hops. Got to check pre-boil on this thing. I don't believe we're still at like 15.
Check it, Nathan.
It's still 14. It's kind of high. We're gonna make a mess of this sheet if I have anything to say about it before the end of it. So we started off with all this hop schedule. We changed it completely. The Bad Ass Brewery's efficiency is just too high.
It's too high.
It's too high.
Your name, your brand,
My brand.
is often connected with double IPA.
I have a brand name now. Yeah.
But you've told me this in the past, you love brewing German beers and Pilsners and
I do. I
and
love
Saisons.
German beers and it's really cool to do this beer with just Pilsner malt. I love the flavor of Pilsner malt, and I think that's the one reason why the Pilsner malt character is so famous worldwide in so many different beer styles. It's such a classic, awesome thing. You can make so many different beers with just 100% Pils malt as the base. You know, you can make so many different variations on a classic, elegant German beer, or you know, really cool Belgian style beer where the yeast are really front and center. Yeah, people do associate me with double IPA, and I do love that style, and I love to think about American hops, but there's so much else going on when you take a look back at the continental European beers too. You know.
So what's going to happen post boil? How's the split going to happen?
We're gonna do 2 carboys, yeah?
Yep.
That's the deal.
Yep.
Bryon.
Split it off. We're hop backing with
Hop back with Rawaka in one of them.
Yep. And then no hop back, which is gonna go
No
straight.
hop back to the other guy.
Right.
Yeah. So 3711, the kind of that French Saison strain, we get the Rawaka hop back, and that yeast strain I think can support a little bit more hoppiness, and then the other guy, 3724, kind of the DuPont variation, will get just straight no hop back, just the wort as it was. Around 3.3 ounces of Rawaka. And darn, that smells good. It smells like lime zest. Hop back the wort under pressure, still at boiling temp or knockout temp essentially. Scrub as many essential oils out of the hops before you send it to the heat exchanger. Counterflow chiller in this case. And you just kind of trap or capture as many of those hop oils in the wort as possible. We're gonna get all, you know, different impact than dry hopping, but the impact would be somewhere between late kettle hopping and dry hopping.
Yeah, there we go. 16 and a half.
Yeah, that makes sense, because the flame isn't like raging. It's just where you want it. So boil off's probably like 10 to 12% at the Bad Ass Brewery, right around 12 I bet.
That's right.
That's right, you knew that all along.
Right, tell me something.
Trying to tell me something?
Tell me something.
.93% efficiency at the Bad Ass Brewery. Thanks to Mr. Paynes and his chemistry.
No big deal.
And Bryon and his setup. We're doing good. Pilsner malt has lots of enzymes, so that was a good starting point for a good conversion. And watching the pH really carefully. Thanks to Chris's diligence there, we really pushed it into a range where we got great, excellent conversion. And the grain was crushed fairly aggressively, which you can do if you watch the pH so you don't extract tannins. So all those factors, I think, help drive efficiency above 90%, which is pretty awesome.
Did you say Chris Paynes is a nerd?
I would say Chris Paynes knows what he's doing.
What about fermentation suggestions? What are we going to do for this beer? What are you any tips for people on brewing Saison specifically on the ferment side?
This one we're going to target for a high 60s pitch temp, and then rise into the mid 70s kind of on its own, and do it the best we can to kind of keep it there after pitching. I think that's a good rule of thumb to start with on Saison. I think once you let the yeast go into 2, 3 or more generations, if you've worked with it in your home brewing setting for a while, the same yeast repitched, you can kind of start driving up that temp and get more predictable results. But it's kind of hard to do that straight off the bat. A lot of people want to try to push it up to 80, 90 degrees, straight off of a smack pack or a vial propagation, and you get some unpredictable results that way, I think. So, but with this one, we'll not try and push it that high. Just do kind of a standard high 60s to mid 70s.
So that might be a little difficult in the basement, being it's winter.
It is Minnesota.
So
Why didn't we make a lager? I don't know. Who decided we were going to make a Saison? So you're going to have a summer Belgian style beer in the dead middle of
That's
winter.
right.
You can
it's a
take
heat
me
wave
for that.
right now. Yeah.
Tell us about this Saison. This is actually a Saison that Nate brought with him from California. Tell us, this one had a very unique fermentation
Yeah.
details, right?
This was meant to be a clone of the DuPont Avec Le Mambo, their Best Wishes kind of holiday beer. I called it Best Wishes Saison as kind of a nod to that. Sugar fed incrementally through ferment. It was the starting gravity was about 1090, and it finished at about 1006 or 04. So it's 9-10% alcohol plus or so, right around that range.
Wow.
Really attenuated well, and I think it was my experimentation of messing around with, can we push the temp up really high? This fermented at its peak at about 95, 93, 95 degrees.
Did you do that
It's
like
pitched
during
in the-
summer? Did you use a heat?
Did during
pad?
the summer, but did use a firm wrap to kind of hold it that high. Pitched it in the mid 70s and then slowly ramped it up and then capped it and held it there while I was doing the sugar additions. So
What does that high temp do for you? It seems
really drives a
peppery,
lot
kinda
of
white
yeah,
wine.
a lot of yeast character in the beer. I don't think you would have to go that high, but I wanted to try to see if you could.
Yeah.
And there could be some issues with higher alcohols in the beer, but I'm not really detecting those especially after this has been aged about 2 years.
Oh.
Kept it cold the whole time. So
Thanks
yeah.
for bringing that.
Yeah. It's been lucky enough to, this is the last few bottles I have, it's done well in competition, and once it, got like about 3 or 4 different score sheets back from a few different comps, I was lucky enough to pull a runner-up best of show a couple times. I'm like, all right, I proved to myself that actually worked. Let's save the rest so we can do stuff like this with it.
So I don't know, we haven't heard from Chris Paynes, man.
No
What was your favorite part of the
Chris
brew day?
Chris is actually the guy who's paying attention here. He noticed that
That's
I
true.
calculated the hops wrong and used the whole hop calculation instead of pellets. He's there watching the pH like crazy. Yeah.
The salts.
Yeah, water salts.
Yeah.
We should talk about water salts for a minute. Chris, you want to talk about
I mean, these are things that like seem over the top, but they're really what you need to do, right? I mean, you can buy a homebrew kit, do the instructions, tap water, and get a beer, but this is where you really start dialing in the quality and controllability, right?
Yeah, you're really kind of taking a direction on whatever beer style you're making. A stout doesn't get brewed like a pale ale, so you kind of need to look at what you're brewing with, what malts, what your source water. Bryon had water that was 8.5 pH to start, so without kind of darker malts or acid, his mash was not going to get down to 5.2, so kind of had to work to get that down so the beer turned out like it should. Otherwise it's going to be designed like a Saison, but it's not going to taste like it. It'll taste like a beer with peppery yeast, but it won't be fully attenuated, it won't be crisp and, Saison-esque.
We'll have
And
to
then your
dig.
other tip was heat up that mash before we even sparged, because that helped it clear up.
kind of help the runoff and clearing up a little bit? Yeah.
Yeah, the sugars get in solution a lot better if the water's warmer, so you have a lot still stuck to the grain. So if you kind of bump up the temp, you speed up the reactions and you get more water flowing around, you pick up more sugar.
So pushing it up to 165, 170 at least, even if you didn't mash out that high, was good for runoff.
Yeah, as long as your pH isn't too high, you don't have to worry about the temperature so much. If you stay below 170, you're fine. But if you start boiling your mash, then you're gonna have issues. So
And Chris Paynes doesn't joke around when it comes to this. He
No.
rolls with a kit that he used to help us dial in the pH there. I think that's standard issue wherever he goes.
Yeah, he did. He's got a tackle box.
Hey, talk about that's got wheels on it.
Serious
Steering wheels,
business.
GPS.
don't
Yeah,
brew
it's
without
awesome.
it.
So Brian's gonna ferment this Saison. What are we gonna name the Saison here? Just Bad Ass Saison?
I don't know.
Bad Ass Brewery Saison. I can start there, and then maybe it'll earn its own.
It'll earn its own name.
So he's gonna ferment it. We're gonna package it. We'll try to get some off to Nate, and we'll do some tasting notes at a later point. But Nate's gonna be nice enough to let us share these two recipes as well. So check that out the recipe that we're brewing here and the recipe that we drink. That is chopandbrew.com/recipes. I want to give shout outs to all three of these guys. All 14 million of you, Brew Your Own magazine, for their support. And if you want to support Chop and Brew, definitely pick up a shirt, beanie, stickers, cutting board. That's on the C&B store at chopandbrew.com. Until then, what you guys say, Nate? You look like you got
Dude,
something.
Brian, is this a hop slam?
Nope.
I've never had this beer. There's a hop slam just sitting here. And I thought I was going to drink it until I noticed that it has dust on it. Beer crimes happening in Bryan's basement.
That's right. I got kids, man. Back off.
You never know what you're gonna find. So until the next episode, chop for chop, brew for brew, Saison. Woo!
Chris Paynes, y'all.
Hey, Chris Paynes, y'all. Another white guy. Yeah. Now we're even.
Here we go.
Like 50-50 ratio.
You got extra grain that's gotta go back in your sack. Well, check this out. Use a funnel.
Oh.
Blam!
Oh.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. You gotta agitate it. Agitate the sack. Agitate the sack. Nothing but the tips.
I've been looking for love, girl.
In all the low places.
Dude, these are hops. White hops. You guys have not seen them yet. We have exclusive
Albino hop dust.
albino hop dust.
From an albino hop head.
Yes.
What are you videoing?
Your face at the moment, son.
Starter that
Oh.
if you need it.
I know, Chris Paynes. Oh, ouch!
Got a squirter.
Hot wart on the leg.
I did that once and burned the hell out of my leg.
Look real.
Yeah, smell good?
Daddy,
Oh, those do smell pretty good.
smells like poop.
Blooper reel, yo.
And it
Blooper
looks
reel.
like